Your bread is quietly harming you, and the companies producing it know exactly what they're doing. That loaf you picked up yesterday contains ingredients that are banned in multiple countries. Additives linked to cancer, diabetes, and behavioral issues in children, yet here in the UK, they're completely allowed. Over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to reveal the 8 bread brands you must avoid and the real reasons behind it. I'll break down what's actually inside them, how those ingredients affect your body, and most importantly, what you should be buying instead. By the end of this, you'll never look at a loaf of bread the same way again. Number 1. Aldi Village Bakery. Here we are, the worst offender, Aldi's Village Bakery range. To be clear, I'm not anti-Aldi. They've transformed UK grocery shopping by making food affordable, but their bread is where they've cut corners severely. Village Bakery bread contains potassium bromate in some specialty loaves. This flour improver is banned in the EU, Canada, Brazil, and China because it's classified as a possible carcinogen. Yet it still appears in some UK bread through regulatory loopholes. When potassium bromate is heated during baking, most of it converts into potassium bromide, which is considered safer. Most but not all. Small residues remain in the finished loaf, and while these amounts are tiny, the long-term effects of eating the bread regularly for years are unknown. Aldi's standard white loaves also contain the highest salt levels I've seen in any UK supermarket bread. A single slice can contain up to 4 grams of salt. If you eat 6 slices a day, which is not unusual for someone having toast for breakfast and sandwiches for lunch, that's 2.4 grams of salt from bread alone. The NHS recommends no more than 6 grams per day. Excess salt intake is directly linked to hypertension, stroke, and heart disease. It also causes water retention, bloating, and that unexplained puffy feeling. But the most concerning part of Aldi Village Bakery is the deceptive health marketing. Their super seeded range sounds incredibly healthy. Covered in seeds, it looks nutritious. But when you check the label, the base is still refined white flour with added gluten for chewiness. The seeds are mainly sprinkled on top for appearance. You're paying extra for what looks like health food, but it's essentially the same problematic bread with a seed disguise. Let me explain what really happens in Aldi's production system. They use a centralized manufacturing model. Massive factories produce hundreds of thousands of loaves daily. At that scale, maintaining consistent quality control becomes nearly impossible. The flour comes from the cheapest suppliers available, often blended from wheat sourced across multiple countries. There's zero traceability. You have no way of knowing where the wheat was grown, how it was treated, or what pesticides were used on it. The dough is mixed by machines at extremely high speeds, which generates heat and destroys the natural gluten structure. Then it's divided by weight using automated systems, placed into tins and sent through massive industrial ovens that bake hundreds of loaves simultaneously. The entire process from raw flour to a packaged loaf takes less than 3 hours. Traditional bread making takes at least 12 to 16 hours. You simply cannot create nutritious, digestible bread in 3 hours. It's physically impossible. Number 2. Lidl Baker's Life. Now we're entering serious territory. Lidl has exploded across the UK, and its in-store bakery section looks fresh and irresistible. The smell of bread fills the air. It feels artisanal. It feels authentic. But it isn't. Lidl's Baker's Life range uses a method called part baking. The bread is manufactured in factories abroad, mainly Germany and Poland, then partially baked, frozen, and shipped to the UK. Once in the store, it's simply finished in the in-store ovens. That's why the smell is so appealing. You're smelling the final bake, not the true bread-making process. Why does this matter? Because part-baked bread requires additional preservatives to survive freezing and long-distance transport. These preservatives often aren't clearly listed on packaging because they're classified as processing aids. But here's the bigger issue with Lidl's bread: quality control. In 2018, Lidl recalled multiple batches of bread due to plastic contamination. In 2020, there were reports of metal fragments found in loaves. These incidents aren't isolated. Lidl's Baker's Life white bread also contains dextrose, which is just another form of sugar. Combined with refined flour, this creates a 1 to 2 punch of blood sugar disruption. The most frustrating part is that Lidl markets this bread as freshly baked in store, when in reality, it's simply finished in store. It's extremely misleading. When bread is frozen, ice crystals form inside the dough. These crystals rupture cell walls and degrade starches. Once the bread is thawed and baked, it can't return to its original texture. To compensate, manufacturers add extra gluten, gums, and emulsifiers to hold the structure together. These additives make the bread seem soft and fresh, but they're harder to digest and can trigger sensitivities even in people who normally handle wheat without issues. Another concern with Lidl's bread is its high salt content. Some white loaves contain over 1 gram of salt per 100 grams of bread. 4 slices give you nearly a third of your daily recommended salt intake, and that's before you've had lunch or dinner. Excess salt doesn't just raise blood pressure, it damages blood vessel linings, overworks your kidneys, and causes calcium to leach from your bones. Over time, this contributes to osteoporosis, particularly in women. Number 3. Tesco Value. Tesco Value bread follows the same blueprint as Asda, but with an extra twist. Many of their budget loaves contain an ingredient called modified wheat starch. Modified starch is made by chemically or physically altering ordinary starch to change its texture and behavior. This process can involve exposing starch to acids, enzymes, or even radiation. The altered starch then behaves differently in food, creating a softer texture that stays intact for longer. The problem is that modified starches can trigger digestive discomfort in sensitive people. They're harder for your body to break down, which can result in bloating, gas, and irregular bowel movements. A standard slice contains less than 1 gram of fiber. Your body needs around 30 grams of fiber each day for healthy digestion. If your bread provides almost none, you're missing a critical nutritional opportunity. Tesco also uses something called vegetable oil in their budget loaves. It sounds harmless, right? But vegetable oil is a vague term that can include highly refined rapeseed oil, palm oil, or soybean oil. These oils are heavily processed, often rancid before arriving at the bakery, and contain high levels of omega-6 fatty acids, which promote inflammation when consumed excessively. Let me explain what chronic inflammation actually does to the body. It's not like the acute inflammation you get from a cut or infection. Chronic inflammation is persistent, low-grade internal damage that slowly harms your cells, tissues, and organs over time. It contributes to arthritis, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and even cancer. And one of the biggest dietary drivers of chronic inflammation is excessive omega-6 fatty acids from refined vegetable oils. What frustrates me most about Tesco is its influence. They are the UK's largest supermarket chain. They absolutely have the resources to source better ingredients and produce real bread at a fair price. Instead, they prioritise profit margins by selling the cheapest product possible. Number 4. Asda Smart Price. If you've ever wondered how a loaf of bread can sell for just 50 pence, this is your answer. Asda Smart Price bread is designed for one purpose: maximum profit using the cheapest possible ingredients. The flour used in these loaves is the lowest grade available. This is flour that's been so aggressively processed and chemically treated that it barely resembles actual wheat. It's bleached using chlorine gas or benzoyl peroxide to achieve a white color. But the most concerning ingredient in Asda Smart Price bread is azodicarbonamide. This chemical is used as a flour improver to make dough more elastic and easier for industrial machines to work with. Here's the unsettling part. Azodicarbonide is also used in manufacturing yoga mats and shoe soles. When it breaks down during baking, it forms semicarbazide and ethyl carbamate, both classified as possible carcinogens. The European Food Safety Authority has raised concerns about these byproducts, yet somehow this additive is still permitted in the UK. ASDA will argue that the amounts used are tiny and fall within legal limits, and technically that's true. But why consume any amount of a chemical that's also used in gym equipment? Let me show you how ASDA Smart Price bread is actually made. It starts with the poorest quality wheat, often wheat rejected from other product lines. This wheat is ground into flour using industrial steel roller mills that generate heat intense enough to destroy nutrients. The flour is then chemically aged, bleached, and treated with improvers just to make it behave like usable dough. Water is added along with the cheapest yeast available. Then sugar is added not to enhance flavor, but to force yeast to work faster. Salt is added in quantities well beyond what's needed. Why? Because salt hides the lack of natural flavor and makes you thirsty, increasing the likelihood you'll buy a drink with your sandwich. ASDA Smart Price white bread contains less than 1 gram of fiber per slice. Your digestive system needs fiber to function properly. Without it, food moves sluggishly through your intestines. Waste isn't eliminated efficiently, leaving you bloated, constipated, and uncomfortable. Number 5. Sainsbury's own brand. Supermarket-owned brands confuse people because customers assume they're basically the same as branded bread, just more affordable. Sometimes that's true, but with Sainsbury's bread, cheaper means cutting corners in ways that should genuinely concern you. Their economy white loaf contains calcium propionate, a preservative added to extend shelf life by preventing mold growth. Sounds helpful, right? Here's the issue. Studies have linked calcium propionate to behavioral problems in children: irritability, disrupted sleep, and difficulty focusing. A study published in the Journal of Pediatrics and Child Health showed that children with ADHD-like symptoms behaved significantly worse when consuming bread containing calcium propionate. When it was removed from their diet, their symptoms improved. Sainsbury's budget bread uses this preservative in higher concentrations to maximize shelf life, since these loaves spend longer in storage and on shelves compared to premium options. Then there's the flour quality. Sainsbury's economy loaves use the absolute cheapest flour available, often bleached and stripped of nearly all nutritional value. After that, they add synthetic vitamins back in to meet legal fortification standards. But your body doesn't absorb synthetic vitamins the same way it absorbs nutrients naturally present in whole foods. What you're eating is nutritionally lifeless bread that's been chemically vitamin boosted just to meet regulations. Let me explain what bleaching flour actually involves. Flour naturally whitens as it ages due to oxidation, but that process takes months and time is money. So manufacturers use chemical bleaching agents like chlorine dioxide, benzoyl peroxide, or potassium bromate to whiten flour within hours. These chemicals don't just change the color, they alter the flour at a molecular level. For example, chlorine dioxide reacts with proteins in the flour to create alloxan, a compound used in labs to induce diabetes in test animals. Yes, you read that correctly. A compound that causes diabetes in laboratory rats is produced when flour is bleached with chlorine dioxide. Sainsbury's also uses monoglycerides and diglycerides as emulsifiers. These come from breaking down fats, often animal fats, though the label never specifies the animal source. So if you're vegetarian, vegan, or avoid pork for religious reasons, you might be unknowingly consuming ingredients that go against your ethics or beliefs. If you're finding this information helpful, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. I'm uncovering the truth behind everyday items people buy without a second thought. And believe me, what's coming up next is even more alarming. Aldi also uses something called calcium sulfate in their bread. This is essentially plaster of Paris, the same material used for repairing walls. In bread, it's used as a dough conditioner and as a calcium fortifier. But calcium sulfate can interfere with iron absorption and cause digestive issues in people sensitive to it. And here's what frustrates me the most about Aldi. They've built their reputation on providing German quality at low prices. German bread is globally respected. Real German bread is made with whole grains, sourdough cultures, and traditional long fermentation methods. But Aldi's UK bread? It's not German quality. It's German efficiency applied to the cheapest possible ingredients. You're getting the scale and speed of German manufacturing with none of the craftsmanship or quality that make German bread exceptional. Okay, I know that was a lot. You might be staring at your kitchen right now thinking, what am I supposed to eat now? Don't worry, there are genuinely good options out there. Look for bread from small independent bakeries that use fewer than 7 ingredients. Real sourdough made with just flour, water, and salt is ideal because the fermentation process breaks down compounds that cause digestive issues and lowers the glycemic impact. If you're buying from supermarkets, choose brands like Bertinet Bread, Artisan Grains, or Biona Organic. Yes, they're more expensive, but you're paying for real ingredients and honest production methods. You can even make bread yourself. It's easier than most people think. A simple no-knead loaf requires just 5 minutes of hands-on time and costs around 40 pence per loaf. You know exactly what goes into it. No chemicals, no preservatives, just real food. You can also consider alternatives entirely. Sourdough, rye, sprouted grain bread, or even lettuce wraps and vegetable-based sandwich replacements can dramatically change how you feel. The goal isn't to give up bread forever. The goal is to choose bread that supports your health instead of slowly damaging it. So, what do you think? Are you currently eating any of these brands? Have you noticed how you feel after eating certain loaves? Drop a comment below. I genuinely want to hear your experience. And if this opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs to know the truth. Your mum, your friend, anyone who's eating these brands without realizing what's really inside them. Number 6. Kingsmill. Kingsmill loves bragging about their Great White range. But great for who? Because it's certainly not great for your blood sugar. Their white bread has a glycemic index of around 75 higher than pure sugar. When you consume high GI foods, your blood sugar spikes, your pancreas floods your system with insulin, and then your levels crash. This leaves you hungry, tired, and craving more carbs. It's a dangerous cycle that can lead to insulin resistance, weight gain, and eventually type 2 diabetes. But here's where it gets more deceptive. Kingsmill's 50/50 loaf, marketed as a healthier choice since it mixes white and wholemeal flour, still contains high fructose glucose syrup. This sweetener has been linked to fatty liver disease, metabolic syndrome, and obesity. Why would bread need this? Because it adds a tiny sweet taste that keeps you coming back for more, activating the same reward pathways in your brain as addictive substances. You're not imagining the cravings. The formula is designed to make you want it, and their tasty wholemeal range isn't innocent either. The second ingredient after wholemeal flour is sugar. They've taken bread that should be nutritious and turned it into another hidden sugar bomb. If your bread lists sugar among the top 3 ingredients, you're not buying bread, you're buying cake pretending to be healthy. Let me explain exactly what happens when you eat Kingsmill bread first thing in the morning. You have toast at 7 a.m. By 8:30, your blood sugar has surged and then collapsed. You feel drained, unfocused, and you find yourself reaching for another coffee or a biscuit just to function. By 10:30, you're ravenous again, even though you only ate 3 hours earlier. This isn't real hunger. This is blood sugar chaos, and it's deliberately engineered by the ingredients inside that bread. Kingsmill also uses rapeseed oil in many of their loaves. Rapeseed oil, more commonly known as canola oil, is heavily processed and often partially hydrogenated. This process creates trans fats, which are among the most damaging substances you can consume. Trans fats raise bad cholesterol, lower good cholesterol, and greatly increase your risk of heart disease. The UK banned artificial trans fats in 2018, but naturally formed trans fats created during oil processing are still permitted. Kingsmill's rapeseed oil falls into that category. They're technically meeting regulations while still selling you something harmful. And here's the part most people miss. Kingsmill is owned by Associated British Foods, the same company behind Primark. They know exactly how to maximize profit margins. They know how to use the cheapest possible ingredients and disguise them as quality. Your health isn't their priority. Your repeat purchases are. Number 7. Hovis. Hovis built its entire brand around nostalgia, that old TV advert of the boy cycling up the hill. British heritage. Simple goodness. But when you actually look at what's inside the bag, that wholesome image falls apart. Their standard white loaf contains caramel coloring. You might assume caramel means melted sugar. Wrong. The caramel coloring used in processed foods is made through a chemical reaction that produces a compound known as 4-methylimidazole, 4-MEI. Studies have connected this chemical to potential cancer risks in animals. Will one slice of bread hurt you? Probably not, but you're not eating one slice, you're eating it daily, sometimes multiple times a day, for years. That long-term build-up matters. Hovis also includes palm oil in several products. The palm oil used in cheap supermarket bread is heavily processed, stripped of nutrients, and added only as a low-cost fat replacement. And here's what truly bothers me about Hovis. They market themselves as the wholesome, traditional, healthier option. They slap wholemeal on the packaging and sprinkle a few seeds on top. But once you flip the bag and read the ingredients, the illusion drops. Their soft white loaf reads like a chemistry list. Wheat, flour, water, yeast, all fine, but then vegetable oils, salt, emulsifiers, flour treatment agents, preservatives, and soya flour. Why soya flour? Because it's cheaper than wheat flour and helps dough rise faster. But soya is one of the world's most genetically modified crops. Unless the label clearly states organic soya, you're almost definitely consuming GMOs. And Hovis has another hidden truth about their wholemeal loaves. They mill the wheat, remove the bran and germ to make white flour, and then mix some of it back in later to call it wholemeal. Real wholemeal bread uses flour that was never separated in the first place. By removing and then re-adding components, they destroy most of the natural nutrition and structural integrity. Number 8. Warburtons. I can already imagine some of you saying, "But Warburtons is everywhere. It's a British classic." And you're right, it is everywhere. That's exactly why it needs to be discussed. Pick up a standard Warburtons white loaf and check the ingredients. You'll come across something called E472E. Sounds harmless, right? Just another number. But E472E is actually mono and diacetyl tartaric acid, esters of mono, and diglycerides. Try pronouncing that 3 times quickly. It's an emulsifier. And although it's technically approved for use, studies show that emulsifiers can interfere with your gut microbiome. Your gut is home to trillions of microorganisms responsible for everything from immunity to mental well-being. When that delicate balance gets disrupted, it's not just digestion that suffers, your entire body feels the impact. Many Warburtons loaves also contain a flour treatment agent, which often includes L-cysteine, a compound that can be sourced from duck feathers or even human hair. Yes, you read that correctly. The bread you're serving your family may contain processed hair protein. And here's something most people never hear about. Warburtons uses the Chorleywood bread process, an industrial method created in the 1960 seconds that allows bread to be produced in under 3 hours rather than the traditional 12 to 16. How is that possible? By adding extra yeast, chemical improvers, and forcing the dough through high-speed mixers that aggressively whip air into it. This process destroys the wheat's natural protein structure. Your digestive system then has to work overtime to break down bread made this way. That bloated, heavy feeling after a simple sandwich? That's not normal. That's your body struggling with chemically accelerated bread. The Chorleywood method also prevents the dough from developing the depth of flavor and nutrients that come from slow fermentation. Instead, manufacturers add more sugar, fat, and salt to make up for the lack of natural taste. What you're eating is essentially industrial foam held together by chemicals.